It's time for Wise Money with Korhorn Financial Group with financial advisors Kevin Korhorn, Mike Bernard, and Josh Gregory.
Welcome to another episode of Wise Money with Korhorn Financial Group, where every week we are helping you take your next wise step in your financial life. I am your host. I'm also one of the certified financial planners on the show. Thanks for being with us. My name's Mike Bernard. With me in the world headquarters of Korhorn Financial Group in the KFG studios, certified financial planners Kevin Korhorn and Josh Gregory.
Yeah, glad to be with you, Mike. In the last 12 months, the stock value of General Electric has wiped out nearly $140 billion. That's billion with a B. Billion dollars. That's twice the amount lost by Enron when it collapsed, and more than the combined bankruptcies of Lehman Brothers and General Motors. And it's not just investors that have been hit by this, but current employees and retirees of GE. So today, we're going to carve out the financial planning lessons that this GE share price crisis provides.
All right. If you have a question for us, maybe some concerns, feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to help and even talk about it on the show if appropriate. You can reach out to us in a few different ways. One, give us a call, send us a text, 574-222-2000. Call or text 574-222-2000. Find us online, wisemoneyradio.com. You can catch up on previous episodes right there. And speaking of, all over social media and YouTube, the YouTube channel, a lot of folks watch there. And you can subscribe to it, like it, all that sort of stuff. Just search Wise Money Radio, and on Facebook and Twitter, Wise Money Radio as well. GE, one of the most romantic companies in the U.S. Not romantic that they do things on Valentine's Day, but just an amazing story. GE started back in the late 1800s by acquiring all the assets of Edison General Electric, of course, Thomas Edison's company, inventor of the light bulb and many other things. And unfortunately, that light bulb's been on a dimmer switch the past 12 months, and looks like it could even go out. You don't like the dad jokes there, Kevin?
That's fairly painful.
I learned them from you. So in late April, so about a month ago or so, Wall Street Journal actually published an article talking about not only just the nerdy stuff that we care about, but some of the personal financial challenges that you care about as well. And we actually want to dive into that story and talk about some of the personal finance lessons that we should all learn and glean from what's been happening with GE stock. I'm a big believer that you can't let any painful experience go by without learning the lesson. So that's what we're going to try and do today. So the first lesson that comes to mind is the idea of owning a lot of your own company's stock.
Yeah, and maybe not just a lot, but maybe too much, right? Yeah. There is a threshold that you can cross where maybe you have too much exposure to just one company stock, whether you work for that company or maybe it's a company that you inherited the stock for, maybe from a loved one who passed away or something like that. But this can happen to a lot of people, and it can happen pretty innocently over time. Because many employers, when they do an employer match, for example, on a retirement plan contribution, when they're throwing money into your retirement plan, some employers require that those dollars go into the company stock.
And that is still out there. That was very prevalent, 10 years ago, 20 years ago. But now, these days, less and less of that's happening, but it's still out there.
That's right. I've had many clients who have company stock in their 401k, and the company has just grown like gangbusters.
Sure.
So over time, that one holding within their portfolio can just kind of crowd out some of the others because it's just growing faster.
It's not just your 401k. The article states here actually that GE had a stock purchase plan,
That's right.
And it really strongly encouraged employees to contribute into this different plan where you could buy shares on a systematic basis, usually at a discount. So there's good things in that, but you just need, so we're not saying don't do it, just
That's
be
right.
careful how much of your total portfolio concentration is in one company.
Well, and also be careful of maybe becoming overly confident in your ability to assess that company.
Yeah.
There's a school of thought out there that says when you're investing in individual stocks, buy the stuff you know and love, right? So as a Disney guy, you might buy Disney stock if you're going to invest in individual stocks because you just love it. You're there.
Might.
Oh, maybe you already have.
Of course.
All right, good self-disclosure there. We'll talk after here, Mike.
Yes, sure.
No, but that thinking often applies to, well, I work for this company. I know it, I love it, and I show up every day. So this belief that maybe somehow you're going to have a better insight into how it's doing and you might be able to navigate the waters a little bit better. Sometimes that overconfidence can get you into trouble because we've seen plenty of examples, GE just the most recent, where your company stock that was everyone's darling before suddenly starts to fall for maybe reasons that you didn't see coming.
One of my best friends on the planet is an ex-GE employee, and he's we don't talk much about finances, but he says how much he loves his GE stock. And in the article, it states here that since the peak of 2000, not 2008, 2000, GE's market cap has fallen $460 billion.
Wow.
And so, boy, there must be a lot of love there because there's a lot of pain in that.
And I would also caution you, we're talking about your own company's stock and not falling too in love with that. But I would say that about any individual stock. I was talking with a client, and he said, "Hey, I don't know why if you had a big liquidity event, you wouldn't put $1 million in AT&T stock." And that was a couple months ago, and AT&T at the time was at $38 per share. As of hot off the presses, it's at $31.99. So you would have lost $7 a share there. And because the point was, well, listen, you've got this great, at the time, 5.75% dividend. Well, guess what? The dividend is now north of 6%. It's called a yield rally. When that share price goes down, that dividend yield increases.
So this, I'm gonna go into a little uncharted territory here, because it certainly is all circumstantial. But there are people right now who've done very well buying their own company stock or investing in individual stock. And so we're not saying, well, that was just sheer luck or that was a foolish move. No, it happens. But we're talking about putting some guardrails on those emotions and those positions. So how much? How much in a company stock? And of course, it's circumstantial, but is there a guardrail that you say, hey, I wouldn't have your company stock exceed X amount, X percent in your portfolio?
I'm curious to hear what you guys would say on this, but I often just individual companies or any one single holding in a portfolio, a rule of thumb, which I don't always like, but
Yeah, you don't.
A rule of thumb would be to not go north of 3 to 5%. And that might be kind of an extreme.
Yeah.
If you look at most mutual funds, they don't hold too much more than that in any one holding. But often when it comes to employer stock, many people have multiples of that, and often we'll start trying to chip away and try to get it down closer to 10% for some people.
So for your own company stock, and again, this is not advice. But my rule of thumb is closer to 10% for your own company stock.
Yeah, if I were to have a rule of thumb, as a rule of thumb, I would look at 10%, and I think it. And again, it totally depends, because if my total investment portfolio is $10,000, then maybe 10% isn't a great number. There are some pretty neat things that you can do. There are some employer stock purchase plans that let you buy in at a 15% discount. So right off the bat, I've made 15% on my shares. So there are things that you want to consider. If you own company stock in a 401k, you need to know about the amazing tax treatment that your gains can have within the 401k. So if you're listening to this, don't go to the computer right now and get online and sell your company stock. Run, don't walk to your certified financial planner and say, hey, I need a plan to know. And again, if concentration builds wealth and diversification preserves it, what should you be doing right now?
That's right. What about having a pension or even health insurance in retirement from your employer, there poses some risk there. We're going to talk about that and more coming up here on Wise Money with Korhorn Financial Group. What?
No, it's funny. I think was it 2 episodes ago, you were like, rule of thumb, I don't like rule of thumb. And then I was thinking, as a rule of thumb, I don't like rule of thumb. And then Kevin said it within seconds of that.
As a rule of thumb, I like to be consistent.
May
Thanks, Kevin.
26. All right. So we'll pick up on pension.
It's still saving for the next.
Whoa.
Well, yeah, computer issues.
Oh, yeah.
We're having computer issues? Okay.
That local SD drive, though, is he saving to that?
That's the problem is because he's logged in as just to get
Hey,
it over
can you pause the YouTubes? Just hit the pause button real quick.
You'd have to turn it off.
Okay,
turn
never
it
mind.
on,
No,
and
never mind. Never mind that.
Splice it together.
Never mind.
our marker it.
No,
96, 99.
I'm good. I'm already out of coughage. And
Oh.
I know I'm gonna need to wet my whistle.
Then go grab some real quick. We don't need to turn the YouTube off
I
there.
can splice. I make notes.
Well, I don't think the YouTube is gonna be nearly as effective if I'm not.
You have a point there. Oh, look at, they're dropping like flies.
Have you guys started doing the whole, we're going to pretend it's live YouTube thing yet? Using a pre-recorded video, but because live videos get more hits.
Yeah, it almost acts, I mean, the way that because of when it posts and all that, people think it's live. That's the interesting thing.
Right, but it shows up in the live search results is what I'm saying, so.
Right.
SEO-wise, YouTube is steering everybody towards live.
Interesting.
But YouTube, right now, they have so many problems right now.
Oh my God, tell me about it.
I feel sorry for the YouTubers that were doing well and then all of a sudden, like, subscription isn't
Yep.
working. So you can be subscribed, you don't get
Notifications are the biggest complaint I get.
What's
I'll-
the biggest complaint you get?
Notifications on YouTube, nobody's getting
I'll get a
notifications.
notification on one of my accounts that something was uploaded the day after it was uploaded.
Good lord.
Okay, so are we gonna go into the story at all, Mikey B?
Well, which one?
In any of these?
I
or
don't
not?
think so. You can if you think it'll be effective.
I mean, I think just reading, you know, Gary Zabrowski, unfortunate, started working for General Electric in 1976 as an aviation factory, at an aviation factory in his hometown, and then just stopping with it's kind of scary. I don't know. I think it lets people hear the story of a real person. And to me, the thing that happened in these communities where GE was the employer of choice is that everyone wanted to get in at GE, and everyone thought, hey, when I get in, do you know, I mean, an annual pension of they're paying him $85,000 a year to not work.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, that is that kind of a liability.
I'll open us and then I can read that and kind of draw people in to the story and kind of reset what we're talking about, and that can lead us into the pension discussion. So let's do that.
Okay.
Is your pension at risk in retirement, or is it a sure thing? We're talking about that as it comes to GE employees and more on this episode. This is Wise Money with Korhorn Financial Group. Thanks for being with us. My name is Mike. Across from me, Kevin Korhorn. Between us, Josh Gregory. Special thanks to the attorneys at Ledoux, Curran & Keene, as well as First State Bank for making the Wise Money Show possible. If you have any questions for us, give us a call, send us a text, 574-222-2000. That's 574-222-2000. That can be a question for the show or just any issue going on in your financial life you need some help with. Reach out to us. Find us on YouTube. Just search Wise Money Radio. Every episode is right there, as well as on podcast, iTunes, Google Play. We've got a couple sick radio show experts here in the studio, Kevin and Josh, both of them. You might hear them cough, sneeze.
Sick, not as in the young kid slang, like really cool.
Yeah, no.
Yeah. Okay.
So Gary Z started working for General Electric back in 1976 at an aviation factory in his hometown of Lynn, Mass. The job paid well, came with benefits, and for Mr. Z provided a career ladder for a man with a high school education who started out cleaning toilets. He said, "You had a job for life if you got in there," said Mr. Z, 61 years old now. He rose to punch press operator and retired in 2016 after working 40 years at the century-old plant, which roared to life after and during World War II. He left GE with an annual pension of $85,000 a year and company stock valued at more than $280,000. His retirement looked pretty good, obviously, yeah, with a pension like that and a good nest egg there, right up until GE shares collapsed about a year ago. His shares are now worth $110,000. That's prompted him to get on the job hunt again, which is a little interesting. I would argue financial planning could have helped or avoided some of that, by the way. I'm just simply reading the article here. He said, "I never planned on retiring and having to go back to work," said Mr. Z, who has monthly mortgage payments and supports a partially disabled wife. It's kind of scary, he says. That is scary. Yeah. And we've seen stories like that happen. This is why we encourage you, as Kevin did in the last segment, run, don't walk to your certified financial planner's office and talk about these things. They should bring confidence, clarity, and creativity. We're going to talk, your certified financial planner is going to talk to you about some of the risks that you might say, no, there's no risk of that happening. No, absolutely. We're going to talk through that.
You know, the interesting observation is with an $85,000 a year pension, you might think, well, that alone makes him solid and just set for retirement, right?
Right.
But what we don't know is what kind of lifestyle he has. Obviously, out on the East Coast, there's a different living standard than what maybe we enjoy in the Midwest here.
The story also says he retired in his early 60s, too early for Social Security.
That's right.
It also says he has a mortgage. Not that I'm knocking on anyone with a mortgage in retirement, but again, if maybe that would have been a financial goal that we could have focused in on. He could have, yeah.
But neither Social Security or a pension by themselves is enough for you to just confidently march into retirement and know that you're set for life. You need to still have a retirement nest egg built up, whether that's in a 401k or an IRA, Roth IRAs. Any of these types of accounts can be the vehicle you use, but the point is you need a pool of dollars that you can tap into whenever, as you need to, in addition to the stream of income that a pension provides.
And he had that. It's just he had it, in hindsight, it all becomes clear, but he had it in the wrong place. He was completely concentrated in GE stock. And again, the reason why when you say why do people behave the way they do financially, because that was the go-to employer in town. He'd been there 40 years, and everyone that he knew owned a bunch of GE stock. Certainly he knew a bunch of GE stock millionaires, and people talked about how much GE stock they owned, and they got excited when the dividend checks came in.
Yeah.
And so
there's a lot to like about that story. It's just when you transition then into retirement, or when you see something like this happen, you realize, hey, maybe a different approach would have been a little more appropriate. Let's talk about that pension. I mean, $85,000 as a pension at age 61, that's pretty good. Unless it freezes, unless it suddenly goes away. Right here in our own backyard, here in Michiana, we've got that going on with a couple of big medical offices where they've frozen their pension, and now they're in the process of saying, we don't want this liability on our financial statements anymore. Here, you take the money and do something with it. We've seen this time and again with very, very large employers in the area, and it's happening right now. What's interesting about GE, the article states that the average pension for very, very large companies is funded about 87%. So that should scare you a little bit.
Yeah.
Only 87% of the money is actually in there, but that's on average. GE's is only funded 71%, and the company's having trouble. It's one of the lowest of the that was studied, one of the lowest funded thresholds of any of those companies. So it's possible. I don't want to scare any of you GE retirees, but it's possible that GE might have to say, hey, we're freezing this thing, or we need to make some changes to this pension.
Yeah, just to put some real numbers to that, they have GE has pension obligations of $100 billion, and it's underfunded by almost $30 billion.
Yeah.
So when you think about that, because you think about Mr. Z, he's got a pension of $85,000 a year. So think about that. General Electric is paying him $85,000 per year for the rest of his life to not work. And it's pretty astounding. And you say, well, where do they get the money for that? As Mr. Z was working, General Electric was supposed to be setting aside the right amount of money, and the pension should be totally funded, so there shouldn't be any issues. But if you have, as in the situation we're talking about, if you're having a hard time paying your bills in the first place, and then you get a letter from the company, and I never believed this could really happen until 2009. And I had a client get a letter that said, we're either going to stop paying the pension or dramatically reduce it. And he got the letter in May of 2009, and it said, and you will find out what you're getting moving forward in September. And he got a letter in September, and his pension was reduced by 25%. And I thought, well, it kind of shook my confidence, because all of the things that you thought could never happen, right? Like a money market account would never break the buck, and these silly little things like a pension fund would never not be able to meet its obligations, and those things started to happen. And so, to me, the if you're listening, the point of the moral of the story is not to be afraid.
Right.
The point of the story is to lean in and have an awareness of the health of the pension that you're receiving and what your company's doing. And if you have that nest egg outside, which Joshua was talking about, you might not want to have it all in one company stock.
That's right. And also just understand why these pension companies or these pension plans are being shut down. New employees are not being offered these pensions because of some of the economic forces that have been at work over the past 3 or 4 decades, with interest rates declining. When they're making deposits into this plan for you or for other employees, they're doing it with certain assumptions on what kind of rate of return they can earn.
Yeah.
And with interest rates still at crazy historic low levels, the pool of money is just not generating what it used to.
Right.
And the other effect is just simply that people are living longer than ever before. Mm-hmm. And that's the one that you should really take note of, in my opinion, because that will affect you whether you have a pension or not.
Right.
Right? You need to plan on having a very long retirement, longer than you think, which means that nest egg that you are building to supplement Social Security, or if you have a pension, supplement that as well. It needs to be larger than maybe you even realize.
Yeah, if you go back and read in the article, it says, the shares collapsed and, his shares are worth $110,000, prompting a late life job hunt. Hey, listen, Mr. Z, I got news for you.
That's not late.
You're looking at a midlife job hunt. You're 61. Right. And things are going to change. People are living longer. The life expectancy in 1900 in the U.S. was in the mid-40s, and we finished 100 years later with a life expectancy in the late 70s.
Yeah.
So
the point here isn't to avoid all of that like the plague. No, just make sure you have good balance and that you're making wise choices with how all of those components of your financial life fit together. There's a couple other lessons we need to glean out of this story. Plus, listener Dave has a question to follow up on the Medicare and Medicare Advantage show that we had just a few episodes ago with expert Ted Foster. That and more coming up here on Wise Money with Korhorn Financial Group.
All right. Hey, so do you know about the person that listened to that episode and is 68 and still working and not enrolled in their drug plan?
Mm-hmm.
And found out that they don't have a creditable drug plan,
Yep.
so they're in the penalty phase.
Yep.
Oh.
So at 65, if you don't have creditable coverage, you have to get a drug plan.
And pretty much all high deductible health plans, HSA plans, their prescription portion is not creditable. And where are pretty much all companies going with their health insurance?
Mm-hmm.
High deductible health plans. So, yep. Thanks,
Makes
Obama.
you wonder how much of that has been disclosed to people in a way that they would even understand that.
Well, if they listen to the Wise Money Show, it has been.
Yeah, so
I can personally attest to that.
I did hear that, Kevin. And on one hand, I'm saying I'm so glad we have this show.
Yes.
To communicate that so that they didn't find out even later. But at the same time, it's also a little sad that, okay, I wish we would have been able to cut that off from even happening in the first place. Right?
Well, yeah,
So it's
I
double-edged
listened.
there.
I actually re-listened to that show and learned more.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's kind of funny because when you're pretty confident you know almost everything there is to know about every possible subject, to learn more, it just, I don't know, it was humbling, and as a humble guy, it really just was.
You are the most humble guy I know.
You've been telling us for years.
Yes. We need the humble button. Okay. So I think I would. We're not doing it in this segment, though.
No, but we need to hit these two final lessons because they can be quick, and one of them deals with health insurance. So,
Okay, health insurance, and what's the other lesson?
just assuming that you're going to work forever. What if your company needs to downsize? Just the idea you need to be planning for the future, for an uncertain future.
Well, if your company needs to downsize, you need to go into nursing because I guess there's going to be a big shortage. That's just my recommendation.
All right, well, there you go.
There's a shortage of financial advisors too.
Yep.
Don't say that out loud. We don't want any competition, Josh.
Oh, okay. All right, we ready? Thank you so much for joining us today. This is Wise Money with Korhorn Financial Group. My name's Mike, here in the KFG studios with Kevin and Josh. Thank you to Bethel College Adult and Graduate Studies, as well as Diane Bennett with RE/MAX 100 for partnering with us on the Wise Money Show. We've been talking about the difficult, painful lessons, personal financial planning lessons learned in the recent crisis of GE, their company, and the stock price, and really how you can prepare for that, how you can avoid that, hopefully, from falling victim to what, sadly, some of the retirees and employees have had to suffer through. If you have any questions, if you have any needs, reach out to us, 574-222-2000. You can call or text us, 574-222-2000. Online, wisemoneyradio.com, and on YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter, search Wise Money Radio. Couple more lessons to hit here before we jump into questions from fans of the show. And the next one is, when you see the struggles that GE has gone through, no, it wasn't scandal like Enron, and it wasn't just, market forces, huge, great recession like it was for Lehman or General Motors. It was just challenges with their business model. You start wondering, well, what about the people who just plan, I don't really need to set money aside for retirement because my plan is I'm going to work for forever. I'm going to work forever. And I think that is a lesson that we can glean from this. It might be difficult because I have family members who have looked at me square in the face and said, yeah, that's my plan. I'm just going to work forever. And they're disabled now.
Yeah.
In their 50s.
Yep. I feel like this is maybe one of the big lessons that all of us need to pay attention to, because the trend is that, yes, many people are starting to work a little bit longer than when I started my career. Everyone wanted to retire in their 50s.
Yeah.
By 60, I want to be out. Now, ages are starting to creep a little bit higher, but the studies are showing that people are still working. They're planning to work longer than they're actually working.
Right.
So something's pushing them out sooner than what they're ready. And most often, it's health-related issues, either for themselves or for a loved one that they need to care for.
I'm hearing an interesting one more and more. The changes in how work is being done is leading some to feel less competent and capable, which is just an uncomfortable feeling. And so I actually have someone retiring this year who said he was planning on working for another 5 years, but is retiring early because he just feels like, I don't feel as good at my job anymore, and it makes me not want to continue as long as I thought I would. Right? So there are forces at work in those later years when you get to the point of when to retire that you might not be able to recognize in your 30s, your 40s, and even your 50s. And so the point here is there could be forces outside of your control, or things just might change.
That's right.
That might lead you to change your plan. And if you haven't been preparing along the way, that might be a very, very tough adjustment.
Yeah, I think the moral of the story is to have a plan. And to me, I think life is lived the easiest when you compare it to a card game. And so,
Which card game?
well, there are lots of card games that you could use depending on the situation that you're talking about. But I think about this almost like hearts. So if you have, no,
Shoot the moon.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So you have the
What an uncomfortable and awkward phrase.
yeah. No, but
Sounds
seriously.
painful.
So you have a hand and you say, hey, I can either get all the points
Right.
if this goes right, or I can get none of the points.
Right.
And if you try to get all the points and the cards don't fall just right, instead of sticking everyone else at the table, you end up getting stuck. And that's where from my experience, you want to have a plan that offers you the greatest amount of flexibility. And you say, well, how do I get great flexibility baked into my financial plans? It's by starting early. And I'm not giving an age, because early needs to be early next week. How's that? But you want to start early, and you want to start doing things that will give you many different options in your financial life as you go, so that if you're working someplace and where you're working, you say, hey, my contribution isn't valued, or there is a robot that's going to be doing what I was doing, or whatever else, you can get retrained, you can get repurposed, you can go find something else that would be fulfilling if you still need to work financially. But I would try, I think of going through life with a kind of a janitor's key ring, and all I'm trying to do is add as many keys to my key ring as I possibly can, so that any door that I come to, I can unlock it.
I just must say I'm a fan of both of those analogies.
Those are good.
They both work.
Yeah, the only problem with the janitor's key ring is watch what it does to your pants.
Yeah. Wear a belt and suspenders. Hey,
Yes.
there we go. We got that phrase too. All right, this one leads right into a couple questions that we have from listeners of the show. And it's a spinoff of an episode that we just had about health insurance. And another lesson that can be learned from GE is if you're relying on retiree health care. When you turn age 65, whether you're working or not, you're going to make one of the biggest financial decisions of your life, and that is, what do you do with Medicare? We've got a question from Dave that we're going to tackle about that. But what if part of that decision is, I don't have to worry about it that much because my company has me covered? And then your company, while you're in retirement, like Honeywell has done recently, says, we don't have you covered. We're changing the deal.
Yeah, that's happening right now. This summer, coverage is ending for a lot of folks who have been dependent upon it. And our own Ted Foster, who's been on the show several times, he's one of our health insurance experts here at Korhorn Financial Group. He's been serving a lot of those folks to help them scramble and figure out what their next option is going to be, whether that's Medicare and Medicare supplement plan in place, getting Part D. We have entire shows about these options that you could go back and listen to if you're facing this potential crisis. But it's an important decision because you're asking the question, well, how much do I want to keep of this risk on my own shoulders? Do I want to have effectively like a high deductible type plan, which is Medicare Advantage, or do you have a Medicare supplement instead, and that covers more things but costs more potentially? So these are important decisions that there's not a one-size-fits-all decision on this. It really depends upon your own budget and what you're facing, and also just some of your preferences as well.
Yeah. So let me retell the story, and I'm going to say it in a way that kind of draws us in and draws us to a close so we can transition to listener questions. And if you have the majority, and even in Mr. Z's example, all of your retirement nest egg in your company stock, as well as your lifelong income is vested, connected with the company, all of your income in your working years, of course, is coming from your company as well as your benefits, and you're relying on benefits from your company to support your retirement, you can see that your entire financial house is built on that foundation of one company continuing to exist and excel and thrive for your entire life. It might happen. I hope it does. However, financial planning is the process that you would use to help shore up and provide a more stable foundation that hopefully does use and leverage the benefits and attributes of the company that you work for, but you're not going to be completely dependent upon it, such that if that foundation, if that company starts to go under, you're not sunk as well.
Yeah, Jack Welch, during his tenure, the S&P 500 was up 700%. GE stock under Jack Welch was up 2,800.
Yeah.
So the S&P 500 was up 700. GE was up 2,800. During Jeffrey Immelt's tenure, the S&P 500 was up 125, and GE was down 30.
Crazy.
So
Crazy.
you never know, and that's why you want to have a plan.
A couple of great listener questions about health insurance and a few other things coming up here on Wise Money with Korhorn Financial Group.
I wanted to say this, but I didn't have the time. But I was sitting yesterday with Evan and preparing for some appointments, and we were looking at the results that some folks have gotten really since October of 16, and it's magic.
That's astounding.
It is truly, truly magic if you let your investments do what the investments can do.
Yeah.
It's magic. But if you're chasing Jack Welch and you catch him and he turns around and it's Jeffrey Immelt. So it's very...
By the way, Jeff, if you're watching right now, sorry.
Well, no, I didn't know how I liked Jeffrey Immelt.
Yeah, we saw him speak a couple years ago. I actually liked him.
If you see him speak, you're kind of drawn to him.
Yeah.
You look at the return of GE under his tenure, and you look, and he was one of President Obama's economic advisors, and I mean, it all fits.
There have been some pretty big challenges, but you got to navigate those in the 21st century here. So
you look at just how huge GE was as well, and it's difficult to keep that kind of a growth trajectory going. Eventually, you start collecting business units that maybe don't have as much growth potential. They've matured, industries changing, and to replace that with other high-flying opportunities is tough. at that scale.
Yeah, so that's what they did. They were in all these industries, and they've just slashed it. They've cut
Yeah.
it. I don't think Jeff was in the process of doing that, but that's what they're doing now. They're getting back to their core.
Well, it's interesting because Jack Welch grew at $387 billion, and Jeffrey shrunk at 151.
Wow.
So he may have shrunk it by 151, but he did that over a long period of time. So.
Yeah.
And if Matt Lauer could have kept his hands to himself.
Oh, no.
GE
Oh, no.
study-
All right, fourth segment. We're landing the plane. We're picking up these health insurance questions, and it looks like Jenny's question, I know, it got cut off there. So it's really, am I allowed to stay on my husband's insurance, or do I have to find other? I don't know
hang on a second.
what happened there. Yeah, that was a operator error there in the outline. I cut that question off. So, all right, we ready?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
All right. If you have a Medicare Advantage plan and you're in retirement, can you switch to traditional Medicare? It's a great question. We've got that from Dave coming up in just a moment. This is Wise Money with Korhorn Financial Group coming to you from the KFG studios. My name is Mike Bernard with Josh Gregory and Kevin Korhorn. If you've missed anything, there's a few pretty thrilling ways for you to catch up on what you've missed. The first is go to the YouTube channel, Wise Money Radio. You can find us right there. Subscribe to it. Every episode's right there. We record every episode, video record every episode. We also audibly record every episode. That's how it gets on the radio. And we throw that on podcasts as well. You can subscribe to that. iTunes, Google Play. Just search Wise Money with Korhorn Financial Group. If the discussion today has sparked any questions or if you have needs going on in your financial life, reach out to us. 574-222-2000. You can call or text that number, 574-222-2000. All right, we've got a couple of great questions from fans of the show, and I think both of them kind of spawn off of the show we did a few weeks ago with health expert Ted Foster talking about health insurance, especially the second question we're going to hit from Dave. So the first one is from Jenny. She says, I am getting a divorce later this year and have been on my husband's health insurance. I'm 49, we have no kids still at home, so it's just me that will need coverage. Am I allowed to stay on my husband's insurance after the divorce, or will I need to go out and find my own coverage? It's a great question.
You hitting that one or am I?
Go ahead. You can take the first swing at it. Jenny, who can I turn to? Josh, what do you have?
You know what? This would be one of those examples of where the first thing I would do is get you connected with someone who is an expert in health insurance to let you look at all your options.
Absolutely.
And have a comparison, because most people have more than one choice on the table. It could be going online and getting an Obamacare plan. That might be the best option for you if you're able to get certain subsidies and things. Might make that more affordable for you. My understanding is that in most circumstances you wouldn't be able to stay on the health insurance plan for your work unless you're applying through COBRA for a while, but that's not a long-term solution. You're 49 years old, so you need something to bridge the gap from 49 all the way to age 65 when you would go on Medicare and have that type of plan in place, which is really kind of a layering of plans there. Yeah. The first thing I would be also asking you about is what's your work situation?
Yeah.
Right? This is a bigger life transition than just figuring out health insurance. It's also about, do you have the right amount of income coming in, and will that employer have a great option for you for health insurance as well? Mm-hmm. I've, unfortunately worked with a lot of folks who, whether it's divorce or death, they find themselves as a single individual, and maybe they were not the main breadwinner for all the years of raising kids or during their married life. And all of a sudden, they're scrambling to get back into the work world. And in particular, this health insurance topic is one of the drivers of what is a sustainable employer and a sustainable work situation for them to finish out until retirement age.
You got it. And that can be a tough change at a time you're going through a very tough change. But that's the first thing that comes to mind for me as well, Jenny, is I'd reevaluate your work situation, and first and foremost from a budgeting and income standpoint so that you can be sustaining, but then second, see how that might play into your health insurance options. Cobra, I'm assuming, would be an option, but that would be expensive. You're paying for all of it. The company doesn't, you don't get any support from your husband's, ex-husband's company, and then you might want to explore Obamacare if neither of those are good options.
Yeah, and just for clarity's sake, Jenny, what you want to know for sure is you can't stay as a dependent on the coverage. So you're going to have to do something, whether that is Cobra, which is basically continuation of benefits, and if you're working right now, maybe one of the things that you can do, maybe this is a qualifying event where you can opt into the insurance at your workplace. If not, because of the way the economy is right now, it is a great time to be either getting training to do something else, or maybe there's another company with your skills that would offer health benefits.
Yep.
And the benefits package is a big deal.
That's right. All right. Thanks for the question, Jenny, and best of luck. Hopefully that helps. Dave has the second question. He says, I'm 69 and have Medicare Advantage for me and my wife. I'm finding that we have a lot of copays and other out-of-pocket expenses with our health insurance, far more than what it sounds like our other friends experience. Is that how it's supposed to work, or do I need to change my Medicare plan? There is a lot to this question, Dave. Great question. Thank you for it. I would point you back to the episode of Wise Money with Korhorn Financial Group from, I believe it was 2 weeks ago, so it should be Season 3, Episode 37, the Medicare show with Ted Foster, where we talked about this. And it's confusing. Number one, it's confusing because you've got two big choices, and they both start with the same word. Medicare. So when you're having cards or having dinner with some friends, you're both talking about Medicare. But what it sounds like are two very, very different experiences. And what I've seen with folks is when you realize your experience is different than the other couple and it sounds worse, you feel like you got ripped off or you are really in a bad situation, and that's uncomfortable. So you'd want to make a change. The point is, though, that choice is traditional Medicare, which is Part A, B, D, and a supplement, which comes with a higher monthly cost, but when you use the insurance, it doesn't cost you much out of pocket. Or going with Medicare Part C, which is Medicare Advantage, which is a much lower monthly cost. But when you use the insurance, you have to pay more out of pocket, higher deductibles.
Yeah, and there is you can go any time from the traditional, which is A, B, D, and a supplement, over to an Advantage plan. You can't go at any time from an Advantage over to the traditional. So when you think of the Advantage, think of an HMO or a PPO type of an arrangement where there are some serious limitations, and people say, well, hey, I'm saving money. I'm either paying nothing or $19 or $49 a month, and that's cheaper than the Medicare supplement that my friends are paying for.
$160 a month or something like that, yeah.
Right.
I have a brand new client who just started working with them, used to work in a local school system, which had amazing benefits all throughout her working career. And, she was just used to, you've got some premiums that you pay, but the company covers all the costs, basically. Very little out-of-pocket expense. That is more of the experience that people report to us when they have the traditional Medicare and Medicare supplement plan in place. Mm-hmm. Medicare Advantage leaves a lot more exposure to potential out-of-pocket costs. But if you're staying healthy and you really don't use the healthcare system all that often, it's a way to potentially save some money because the premiums are lower every month. But you just don't know what you're still exposed to. Mm-hmm. And so I encourage people to think back on, well, you've had your entire working career kind of training yourself that insurance works a certain way. And setting up your health insurance game plan for retirement should be consistent with what the experience you're trying to create for yourself.
And at the risk of a little shameless self-promotion here, if you go back and listen to that show that Ted did, one of the points that he brought up, and we actually had a listener to the show come to us and say, hey, I'm in this situation. It happened to me. If you are 65, you need to sign up for Part D if you don't have a plan that has creditable drug coverage. And that sounds like a bunch of mumbo jumbo.
Yeah, it does.
Only because it is.
Yep.
But basically, if you have a high deductible health plan and you're putting money into an HSA, it's likely that you do not have creditable coverage. So if you are age 65 and older, your employer should be providing you a letter annually saying you either do or do not have creditable coverage. And again, we're getting in the weeds a little bit here. Reach out to Ted and get an answer.
And you need to make this decision in light of your entire financial plan. It just needs to be baked in. Thanks for the question, Dave and Jenny. That is all the time we have for today. On behalf of Josh Gregory, Kevin Korhorn, and the rest of us at Korhorn Financial Group, have a great weekend. We'll see you next Saturday for Wise Money with Korhorn Financial Group.
Securities offered through Silver Oak Securities, member FINRA/SIPC. Advisory services offered through KFG Wealth Management, LLC. Doing business as Korhorn Financial Group. KFG Wealth Management, LLC and Silver Oak Securities Incorporated companies are unaffiliated.